And we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to episode 6. I'm Alex.
And I'm Maddie.
And this is the creatine episode. Creatine 101 is what I've named it. I don't know if I told you that.
No, but that is fitting.
I mean, it's a pretty straightforward name.
Yeah.
Not breaking any rules with this one, you know? We're not stretching our limits with this naming.
No, certainly not.
Yeah. I mean, what did we do? We did fat loss 101. I think we did muscle growth 101. Now we're doing creatine 101. I don't know if muscle growth was muscle growth 101.
I don't know, but it should have been. Probably. We could do a whole series.
This is our 6th episode, and we don't even remember what we named the prior 5.
Well, to be fair, we name them as we start recording.
Yeah. No, and then we don't even stick with it. I mean, last week, it was the vacation tips one.
Yeah.
And I started by saying, how to maintain weight and fitness on vacation. And we were clear, that we didn't have a better name in mind.
Yeah.
And none came up. I mean,
no.
Vacation tips is so vague. It's like, if people didn't know that we were a fitness and nutrition podcast and they're like, oh, vacation tips. So they have when to book a flight.
Right. Travel tips.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Or like, remember to wear sunscreen. We never even once mentioned sunscreen.
No.
Well, it depends on where you're vacationing. If there's a high UV index,
I think you should use sunscreen regardless.
You should use That's actually a good tip. Talk to any dermatologist; they'll all be telling you sunscreen is like number 1.
Yeah, I've heard even if you're just inside in really harsh lights.
What?
Yeah, that you should still be putting sunscreen on.
Okay.
Yeah, if you work in like broadcasting or things like that and you have like...
Well, don't they have like layers of makeup on, like broadcasters?
I would not...
I mean, doesn't like foundation have some degree of SPF, or is that not a thing?
Some do, but I don't know if I would necessarily count that.
Well, do you want to talk about, the big announcement that we shared on social media that we can finally talk about on the podcast?
Yeah, big news. We're pregnant.
Well, I'm not.
No, that's a controversial thing. Some people really do not like when you say we are pregnant.
Right. We're expecting a baby.
Yeah. Yes. I personally don't mind.
No, it doesn't bother me.
There's some like prep work you have to do as far as like preparing to know how to take care of a baby.
Oh, I thought, yeah. Yes. That part. Yeah.
That part. Yeah.
When you said prep work, I was like, I mean, we're keeping it PG.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I just got to do like the standard, like the thing, which is like, it's here. I mean, it's on our outline. I got to do the standard thing. So let me just go through that, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about the pregnancy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you're listening to this and you appreciate us doing this podcast, we would really appreciate it if you give us a 5-star rating, 5-star review. If you liked or subscribed wherever you're listening. And if you really want to go the extra mile, go ahead and screenshot and share on your Instagram story and tag us at AlexTeamyFitness and at
Meals with Maddie.
Yeah, we would really appreciate it. It just helps us grow the podcast. And really exciting, we have over, 3,000 or 4,000 views or listens?
I didn't even know that.
I posted on my story the other day, and I think it's 3,000. Let's be conservative and say 3,000. That way I'm not falsifying evidence. But yeah, over 3,000 views. And that was just on 5 podcast episodes. The 6th one hadn't been posted at the time, with over a 70% completion rate.
Wow. That's amazing.
Just bonkers.
Because some of them get a little long.
Well, the Muscle Growth podcast actually had a 71% completion rate, despite being an hour and 46 minutes long. And that was a marathon. I mean, as far as like podcasts go, they're always kind of lengthy. But that one, I mean, I spent so much time prepping for that one. Yeah.
And it was great.
Yeah.
Great episode.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I know you're kind of patting yourself on the back for that one, but I did so much work that like So yeah, the 5-star review, the sharing on your Instagram story, that's a free way to support us. Mm-hmm. And if you do want a monetary way to support us, we'd really appreciate it, because we do have a baby on the way. No pressure. I'm kidding. I don't want to do that. But seriously, if you do want to monetarily support us in any way, there are 2 ways to do that. Maddie doesn't have any paid products, but I do. You could sign up for the A-Team, which is my group training program. It is a new cycle every 6 weeks. We are currently, at the time of this recording, about halfway through our 4th out of 6th week. It is $27 a month, so less than $1 a day, and it comes with a 7-day free trial, so you can try it totally risk-free. If you don't like it, just cancel. It's no sweat. It doesn't cost me anything for you to check it out, and it doesn't cost you anything to check it out either, as long as, you cancel before those 7 days are up. And if you genuinely can't afford it, I do welcome every single person to, if you seriously can't afford it, just go in, screenshot the workouts and cancel, and then track them with the app called Strong. That's a free, you could track it any way you want, but that's the app that I use to track my workouts. It's free to use and very straightforward interface. And then if you want a little bit more than just workouts, I have my group training, nutrition, and education program, Forward Forever, with Danielle, the dietitian. The next cycle opens up, the registration opens up on February 11th. So that would be Sunday. And we start on the Monday after that. So not the next day, Monday, but the week after that. So February 19th. So there's an 8-day registration period. I highly recommend that program. That is a phenomenal program that Danielle and I are consistently putting more, and Maddie too, actually, is contributing.
Help out a little bit.
You contribute quite a lot to that. So similar thing, it's $200 to sign up, and then there's a continuation option for $35 a month after that. Gonna have the standard disclaimer of like, if you're listening to this in the future, I cannot promise that prices didn't go up. And actually, we have a special this time that I got the okay to announce. We are doing our first ever special on Forward Forever, and this cycle only, as far as we know, we're doing a Valentine's special. So if you have a special someone in your life, whether that is a husband, a wife, or just a friend that wants to sign up for Forward Forever along with you, you can both sign up, and it's buy one, get one 50% off. So rather than paying $400 combined for 2 people, you would pay $300 combined for 2 people. So
great deal.
Yeah, you can figure out how to split those costs. Maybe you don't even tell your friend, and you pay $100 and they pay $200, or maybe you go even Steven, $150 each. Anyway, that was quite the plug. But hey, we don't make any money from this podcast, so I got to make money somehow, right? Got a baby on the way. Okay. Today we're talking. Oh, wait. Do you want to talk about the pregnancy stuff, like at all, or like, how have you been feeling? Tell people how you've been feeling.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind. As of today, as of recording, I'm 17 weeks, so we're out of the trenches of the first trimester, which is amazing. If you've been pregnant or have been around pregnant people, you probably know the first trimester is not that fun. Honestly, I had it pretty easy, all things considered.
Until the last 2 or 3, probably 3 weeks, maybe a month.
Yeah. Unlike a lot of people that I've talked to, I got progressively worse in the first trimester. But, we're all good now.
Nausea.
Yeah, the nausea was really tough.
Stuffiness. That was way worse from allergies that you have right now.
Yeah. So sorry if I sound a little nasally or congested.
Yeah.
Just getting over some pregnancy colds.
Yep. Anything else that we want to talk about in regards to that? Not the feedback, that'd be weird, but the response from everybody when we did our, we made our announcement videos. You did one for Meals with Maddie, I did one for my account, and then you did one for your personal account. And that was just really kind. I legitimately couldn't get to all the comments, so I just kind of put out a blanket message of like, thank you so much, and I do mean it. I had a lot of people texting and sending me DMs, and that's really appreciated too. And yeah, I think eventually we will do a pregnancy Q&A podcast.
Yeah.
We aren't pregnancy experts, obviously. That's not in my wheelhouse, but we'll keep it more vague than that.
Yeah.
And I will do my due diligence on, trying to keep this as evidence-based as possible.
Right. But
while staying within my scope.
Yeah, we'll talk just about our experience more than anything, and then yeah. Okay.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
Awesome. So today, like I said, we're talking about creatine, and oh man, creatine is fascinating. I enjoyed. I enjoyed. Did you enjoy the prep for this one?
Definitely. This was
way more interesting.
Yes, than I anticipated.
Especially the history.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's actually where we're going to start, is with the history of creatine. So prior to this episode, what would you have thought about creatine? I'm going to ask you some questions.
Sure.
First, just broad. Give it to me. What would you thought of creatine?
Yeah, I had a very elementary school understanding. Basically, just knew it was really good for muscle and strength building, and that was the big thing. I had heard that There's some inklings of like there could be neurological benefits,
Yep.
but really couldn't get too in the weeds on that.
Right. And so it's just mostly the information that you kind of hear me spout.
Right.
Yeah. And growing up, did you have any kind of experience or any knowledge with, I know you didn't take creatine necessarily growing up, but did you have any, I don't know, when people in high school were taking it or anything like that, what were your kind of thoughts or reactions?
You're giving me way more credit than you should as far as what I was talking to my friends about.
Yeah, that's very reasonable.
Creatine was brand new to me when we started dating.
Yeah.
I like most health and fitness things.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you saw a white baggie in the pantry one time. Or was that magnesium powder?
That was magnesium, but it was
powder.
Concerning.
Yeah. It was this tiny bag. I mean, like
it wasn't even a tiny bag.
It was tiny bag. It was like a Ziploc bag.
Yeah, like a snack size Ziploc bag.
Yeah.
And this is back like many apartments ago. We've been together maybe 2-3 years at this point.
Yeah.
So like I knew you.
You knew me.
Yeah. And I opened up a cabinet.
And it like fell out or something. And
it's just this little bag full of white powder.
As if I would have like, I mean, I don't know how many thousands of dollars worth of cocaine that would be.
Yeah.
But it would be, I'd have to assume it would be a lot of money.
In my defense, a bigger part of me thought that it was left from a previous tenant, which was like more concerning.
They left $5,000 worth of cocaine next to the mac and cheese.
Yeah. And I was like, we've lived here for months. How have we never found this?
Yeah, just in the kitchen. Yeah. So my first experience that I can remember, at least with creatine, was my brother was in high school or early college. But if he was in early college, he was living at home in between, like in the summer. Mm-hmm. But I'm pretty sure it was still high school. And he mentioned that he wanted to take creatine. And my mom was vehemently against it. Mm-hmm. She thought creatine is a steroid. Mm-hmm. And we're actually going to dive into that. Mm-hmm. So just for to ease those concerns before somebody writes off, like, I'm not listening to this episode. All they've talked about is self-promotion, pregnancy, and steroids. No, it is not a steroid. Although it does similar things in terms of increasing your strength and muscle growth rates, which, I mean, that's the main goal of most steroids.
Yeah, you could definitely see where people like make that jump.
And actually, there's a very interesting history there that let's dive into right now. Mm-hmm. Okay, so close your eyes and go back to 1832. What was happening in 1832? I actually don't know. I mean, cars didn't exist. They had horse and buggy. To me, history is very muddied in terms of, I don't know history.
Timelines are just a little confusing because of the way we're taught history too, that you don't really consider like the overlap of things globally because
that's so true.
You're taught essentially continent by continent.
There was one that I saw that like Cleopatra was alive at the same time as like, I don't want to say something and then it's just like wildly off based.
Yeah, everyone in the comments is like, that's not
real,
true at all.
Yeah, but it was surprising to me. Can you get that up for us? Cleopatra alive at same time as, and I'm sure Google will autocomplete that. Was it Chris Columbus? Don't tell me it's Chris Columbus. Okay, that's not.
She was.
You know what?
I don't know.
Let's gloss over the segment. If any listeners have this fun fact ready at their disposal, please send it to me. Okay, 1832. The discovery of creatine was in 1832 and is credited to a French scientist named Michel Eugène Chevreul. He identified it as a component of skeletal muscle. And skeletal muscle, that's just muscle that is moving bones. The clarification here is there's cardiac muscle as well, which is the heart. So skeletal muscle moves bones. That's all the muscle that we can kind of like grow. I mean, I guess. Anyway, so when he discovered it in 1832, he named it after the Greek word for meat, which was kreos. That's with a K. Because, he named it after that because he found it in skeletal muscle. And now here's where the fun facts begin. So strap on in. Michel is one of the 72 scientists, mathematicians, and engineers whose names are inscribed on the Eiffel Tower. And you're about to find out why. It's much more than creatine. This dude was a freaking genius. This
Yeah.
dude's life was one of the most prolific lives I think I've ever read about, personally.
Yeah. There's something really hard for me to wrap my mind around about discoveries that happened in the 1800s and like how did they figure that out? Like
They didn't have
I get
computers.
how we figure stuff out now.
Sure, there's labs and scientists, and I mean, there's scientists back then, but
And I know that makes me sound
no,
dumb.
no. What did they have to do? They had to do it all with pen and paper? Like,
It's just hard for me to wrap my mind around some of this.
I hope that our great grandchildren are in the 2000, in like the 2300s or something like that, 2200s, 2300s. We fast forward another 200-300 years. I hope they're like, how did they do everything without? Well, I mean, we kind of have AI now.
Yeah.
I don't think our great grandkids are going to be like, I'm so proud of our parents for starting that podcast. That was very good. I have tears.
That was really funny. That was really, really funny.
Anyway, sorry. That was very funny. I had to wipe away tears. Okay, so anyways, back to Michel. So Michel, as remarkable as he was, unlike me, lived to... I'm feeling funny today, I guess. I don't know.
Oh my God.
He lived to be 102 years old, which would be a feat in and of itself, honestly. And in those 102 years, he became pretty intelligent. And in the field specifically, well, actually a lot of things, but he became a pioneer in the field of gerontology, which is the study of various aspects of aging.
If you lived to 102, you would have some good insights.
Yeah, whatever he was doing was working, which I guess probably what he was doing was
taking creatine.
I was going to say he was probably just working with his resume. This dude's resume is top notch.
Yeah.
Okay, so he discovers creatine. He lived to 102. Early in his career, he did a lot of work with animal fats and revolutionized soap and candle manufacturing. So, I mean, that's cool. He was also the first scientist to define the concept of a chemical compound and the first to formally characterize organic compounds, which led to him being considered the founder of modern organic chemistry. So if you've taken organic chemistry and hated your life, you can borderline thank this guy for that. Yeah. Michel Chevreul. I also, this actually isn't in the show notes, but I told you about this. I looked up last names because I realized like Chevreul is kind of close to Chevrolet, the car manufacturer. And I thought, is there any carryover there? And it turns out that does come from the same lineage in terms of names. Chevrolet and Chevrolet, along with probably about 30 other names, come from the same, at least some degree of family lineage. They had similar last names. And so there was this house crest. I don't know. It was this cool website. I ended up looking up my own last name and slight flex. I mean, not my flex, but my dad's flex. Under like notable achievements for the Chevreul family, this guy, Michel Chevreul, was there, and they listed out his achievements and stuff like that. And when you typed in Teamy on that, my dad's name was there. So it was a very proud moment to see that because I just thought it would be like a fun, little experiment. And I sent it over to him, to my dad, my mom, and my dad's an inventor. And I sent it over to them, and my dad responded and said, my name. He said, your name will be there someday. And big shoes. But luckily I have this podcast. All right, some more about Michel. Hopefully it's not Michael. I'm just spitting on his grave. It's got to be Michel.
I thought it was Mikel.
Really?
I mean, just when you like wrote it down here.
Well,
but I mean, I wouldn't know.
I don't know. I just figured like French. It's always like Michel,
Yeah, it could be for sure.
Anyway, Michel, so organic chemistry. He was also the first to demonstrate that diabetics excrete glucose in their urine. That would probably end up being pretty pivotal for diabetics, blood sugar management. He also studied textiles and textile dyes specifically while he was the director at Goblin's Manufactory in Paris, which led to color theories that, quote, provided the scientific basis for Impressionist and Neo-Impressionist painting. This dude was a big deal.
Yeah.
Big deal.
Yeah. I mean, that's quite
put out the F part of that, BFD, to keep it PG. So, yeah, that's where it all began. And honestly, I just kind of wanted to give the listeners those fun facts about Michel so that they can, I don't know, win some trivia at some point down the road.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Very specific trivia.
Very specific trivia.
But you never know.
So that was back in 1832 specifically, and 100 years go by, and roughly. And in the 1920s, there were studies where people started ingesting creatine, but it wasn't excreted. And so this kind of started to show that our body could store it, and they weren't really sure at the time, like, what the hell was going on. They had no clue. They were like, maybe it's kind of, because it's made of 3 amino acids, so maybe they were like, maybe it's broken down and used kind of just like protein. But that wasn't what was happening, which we would find out later. But zoom forward another 70 years, and creatine started finding its way into sport, which is kind of how a lot of these I'm going to say quote cutting. I mean, yeah, it was cutting edge at the time. So how a lot of these cutting edge things go is somebody tries to find a way to improve their performance or the amount of money they have, or, something like that. Usually those things kind of go hand in hand. But 1992 Olympics in Barcelona. In August 7th, 1992, an article in the Times reported that Linford Christie, the gold medal winner at 100 meters, had used creatine before the Olympics. However, it should also be mentioned that Linford Christie was found guilty of doping later in his career. And I want to kind of dump on Linford Christie, but also not really at the same time, because the 100-meter race was notorious for doping and drug usage. So not just him, it was kind of borderline the norm. Now, it was frowned upon. I mean, nobody was happy about it, but it was very widespread drug use in the 100 meters specifically. So then, after that article, an article in Bodybuilding Monthly named Sally Gunnell, who was the gold medalist in the 400-meter hurdles, as another creatine user. And then the Times, once again, noted that 100-meter hurdler Colin Jackson began taking creatine before the Olympics. So it started kind of making its way into the mainstream, like, hey, this Olympian is doing it, this Olympian's doing it, and they're all getting gold medals. So what's going on? Well, as it started gaining, commercial popularity, and a company popped up called Experimental and Applied Sciences. They call themselves EAS. And that was in 1993. They introduced the compound to the sports nutrition market under the name Phosphagen. Since then, it has become one of the most popular sports supplements with more than $400 million in annual sales.
It's insane.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for creatine alone to have nearly $500 million in annual sales, and I'm sure that's only gone up, because I'm pretty sure that number was, I don't remember when that number was from, that 400 million, but I'm sure it's gone up, especially as prices of creatine have gone up, which you were looking at right before we started.
Yeah.
Because you had mentioned that.
Yeah. So I remember, I mean, this is all anecdotal and I don't have concrete numbers or whatever, but I remember we used to buy creatine by like a pretty big bag for $30-$40. Those are somewhat made
kilo,
up.
I think.
Yeah.
Kilo, so 2.2 pounds.
Sometime around the pandemic, they skyrocketed prices.
Yeah, supply chain got more difficult, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It went up by double.
Yeah.
All right, next up. So that was the history. Hope you enjoyed it. For the people who don't like history, I hope you skipped ahead to this section.
Yeah.
Or just zoned out or something. Next up, we have what is creatine and how does it work? This is the part where I think most people are going to be like kind of zoning in for. So creatine is an organic compound comprised of 3 amino acids, arginine, glycine, and methionine. It is primarily made in the kidneys and liver, and we also consume it for meat. We do produce it on our own, but I think that that's a part that a lot of people don't realize.
Yes, definitely.
Our body makes creatine.
Yeah.
that is something that like it's not going to not make creatine. We'll kind of talk about why that is, but if we produce it on our own and it's consumed in at least omnivorous diets, why would we need to supplement?
Great question.
It's a very good question. And the reason for that is because we don't produce or consume enough to fully saturate our storages. Meat contains about 0.7 grams of creatine per 6-ounce serving. Most people don't eat multiple pounds of meat.
Mm-mm.
And so to fully saturate a person's storage, they might need to eat roughly 2 to 3 pounds of meat per day, which is...
That's a pretty hefty...
It's just super unrealistic.
Amount.
I mean, that would be like 200, 250, 300 maybe grams of like chicken, for example. I'm sorry, grams of protein worth of chicken.
Yeah.
Which, if anybody here, any listeners have, if you tracked your calories, a lot of people that I work with, like when I did one-on-one coaching, they would struggle to get like 120 grams of protein. Mm-hmm. So the idea of like, no, I don't need to take creatine. I eat plenty of meat. You don't eat that much meat.
No, that's a pretty tough target to hit for people with a relatively,
within the confines of reality. It's just. So it's very convenient that we do have creatine as a powder or as a capsule, which is just powder in a capsule. I mean, same thing, but very convenient for that. So how creatine works, before we get into that, we need to talk about one of the energy systems within our body. And there are 3 main energy systems. One is the ATP-PC system, which is adenosine triphosphate phosphocreatine system. That is a very short term, maybe powers 8 to 10 seconds. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then there's the glycolytic system. And then there is the oxidative system, which uses more fats. And the oxidative system, again, for those who are interested in very long history, is what allowed us to be great hunters. We were not going to, I don't know if we're going all the way back to like saber-tooth tigers and woolly mammoths. I guess we could. But we really weren't going to overpower a lot of the things we hunted. Bison, for example. Mm-hmm. We're really going to overpower them. And yes, we could outsmart them and outnumber them potentially. But more than anything else, due to the oxidative system, which just allows us to go and go and go at a very low rate for long, long, long periods of time, allowed us to outwalk our prey. And that was basically it, is we would just... I say we as if I do anything besides go to the grocery store. But we could just walk down prey for miles and miles and miles and miles, and we would hunt them down essentially due to exhaustion.
That's so interesting.
It is interesting, yeah. So every single one of those systems, at the very base level, we have to use ATP for energy. ATP is this is kind of the phrase is the energy currency of everything in our body. So when I'm moving my hands around, when I'm blinking my eyes, muscle contractions all use ATP. How that energy comes to be is ATP becomes ADP and releases energy. So adenosine triphosphate, there's an adenosine group attached to 3 phosphate groups, or attached to that are 3 phosphate groups. When one of those phosphate groups snap off, that is what releases a bunch of energy. But then it becomes unusable ADP, adenosine diphosphate, because there are now 2 phosphate groups. So what creatine does is we ingest it, and then creatine binds to a phosphate group. And so the big thing here is that when ADP is around, creatine will donate its phosphate group to that ADP and make it usable and functional ATP again. Did that make sense? I know it's a lot of acronyms.
Yeah.
Basically just think of it as like, there is this reserve. There are these like, let's say creatine has this reserve of a bunch of, just hang with me here. Maybe it's a little abstract, and I don't know if this will be really good or not, but let's say creatine attaches to the number 1, and there are all these like little creatines, and they're all attached to 1s. And so we have this pool of 1s over here, and then we have these ATPs, and there are, every adenosine group has a 1, 1, and a 1. So there are 3 of them. So that's every ATP has 3 ones. One of those ones has to break off, and that's what releases energy. And to make it from the 2 back to a 3, creatine donates one of its ones. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Hopefully that made sense for the listener.
Yeah, hopefully.
Because especially if you're not visual, I was like holding up 2s and 3s and 1s. I look like one of those air traffic controller people, you know, on the runway. Their job always looked cool. You know, like the orange, it's just like a lot of power.
Yeah.
Like those orange light up sticks, and they just like, you know.
And I think they make good money.
Do they?
I think so. I mean, I could be making that up.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah.
It sounds legit.
Post-editing note, it was not legit, and we should not take her word for it. An airline ramp agent makes about $15 an hour and roughly $30,000 salary. So not, you know, they're not bringing home the bacon. Post-editing note number 2. Maddie saw this and she wanted me to be very clear. She meant the salary of an air traffic controller was they bring home the bacon. So another post-edit note, the median salary, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, for an air traffic controller is $132,000 per year as of May 2022. So we're not slandering Maddie today.
So the ATP system can power exercise for about 8 to 10 seconds. And that's assuming that, well, let's just say 8 to 10 seconds. And then it takes roughly 3 to 5 minutes to completely recover. And this is a large part of the reason that we, as a scientific community, recommend 2 to 3 minutes of rest between each set of exercise. Is at 90 seconds of rest, you might be able to recover. And this is just like a very, very broad number. This isn't super, super specific, but maybe after 90 seconds of rest, after doing a hard set of exercise, you might be able to recover 80% of the ATP. So if you rest for up to 2 or 3 minutes, you might be getting 90, 95%. And so your performance on subsequent sets will still be really good versus somebody who's just like does a hard set and then goes right into the next thing. That would not be so good for long-term muscle and strength development. Now, I will say that changes if you are, one, not working super hard. I think a lot of people who say that they don't need that rest, they just aren't pushing themselves hard enough. I mean, you saw me in the gym today. I looked like I was going to throw up and cry at the same time.
Yeah.
It was ugly. I was doing leg day, and leg curls specifically, they just wreck me. I take them to failure, you know? And then the other kind of caveat to this is creatine usage is localized. And this is something that I find very interesting. Maybe not super, I mean, it is interesting, but it's just important to note that it is localized. So what I mean by that is you have creatine storages in your bicep, in your tricep, in your quads, in your hamstrings. So if you are limited on time and you want to maximize your time and efficiency, then supersetting, as long as it's like antagonist muscles, could be a really, really good call, or antagonist movements. So like a push and then a pull, or, you know, just don't do something like a barbell row or some kind of rowing motion, which would target your back and as well as your biceps, and then do like a bicep curl, because the ATP, a lot of the ATP has already been used from your bicep in that pulling motion. So yeah, just choose movements that don't kind of interfere with each other. 95% of creatine is stored in skeletal muscle. And it takes, actually, I should start with this question. How long does it take to saturate storages? So you have 2 options to saturate your storages. You can do either a loading or a maintenance dose. And I think there are a lot of blogs out there that say like, oh, you should be doing loading protocols. And I wouldn't have thought this, but I've gotten asked so many questions about loading as if it's this like thing you have to do. And I firmly disagree with that. You absolutely could. Let's say you go the loading route. You can take 20 grams of creatine per day for 5 to 7 days, and then you just switch off to a maintenance dose. You will be fully saturated within a week, and potentially even within like 3 to 5 days. You might not have to do it for a full week. And if you go the maintenance route, you just take 3 to 5 grams every single day, and you'll be saturated roughly within 4 weeks. Now, if you have more muscle mass, you have more capability for more storage. So it can be recommended to take up to 7 or even 10 grams a day. You know, this is somebody, I think there are a lot of people who say like, oh, I have a lot of muscle mass. And I'm going to call out women specifically. And only because I have 80% of my Instagram followers are women. And I have gotten a few comments of like, I put on muscle very easily. And I go to their profile picture. I go through if they're on a public profile, I go through their photos. These women are not muscular. They're not. And so I'm not saying like all women are not. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm just saying these specific instances. So think of somebody who is 180 pounds but lean. I'm going to say that probably 85% of our listeners, and maybe even more, have never seen a person who is 180 pounds and lean.
Yeah.
How many people could we name? Bennett? Nate? Nate couldn't get to 180. He'd be.
I was like, 180 seems really.
He would. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm honestly just thinking like
Bennett.
UFC fighters.
Yeah, or UFC fighters.
Like athletes.
Yeah. But like big athletes
that are also lean. There are
Yes.
some big athletes who are not
lean.
lean.
Yeah.
That's sport dependent. That's not like a.
And the leanness doesn't matter. I'm
Right.
just trying to create like that context. Like they could be 300 pounds and they could
Sure.
definitely be, if they got to 180, they would be lean, like, so all that's to say is like, it's a lot of muscle mass to go up to 7 to 10 grams. And it's not the end of the world. If you try 7 to 10 grams and you're like, I don't know, is it doing anything more? You're just going to pee it out. So not a big deal. Now, here's the question. Maddie's already laughing. Should you load? Do you want to handle this segment?
Yeah, we can talk about it. So,
What was
Well,
it,
I guess-
2019 or?
yeah, it was pre-pandemic. So I don't know if we want to mention prior that there are some things when you're loading creatine, you have to stay very hydrated.
Yeah, because it pulls water into the muscle.
Yeah, so you want to just drink a lot of water,
Yeah,
especially if you're loading.
Especially if you're loading.
So I don't even know if it was neurovirus. That's what you have written down. But we got a stomach bug.
We got some kind of stomach bug. I say it was a neurovirus because if I sipped any water, and I thought that was typical of a neurovirus. If I sipped any water, I would throw up immediately.
I don't know enough about specific illnesses.
I don't know anything about anything.
I'm going to say it was a stomach bug.
Let's say it's a stomach bug.
That's probably downplaying it.
Let's play our card safe.
It was horrible.
And we were tail end of loading. Maybe middle of
so
the way
just
through loading.
Horrible timing. What a coincidence.
We were having the worst stomach cramps of our entire lives and just vomiting our brains out, and we couldn't hold down any water.
Yeah. So you can't drink more water, which you need to help alleviate the cramping that you're experiencing because you're loading creatine.
Yep.
So there's no remedy to the situation.
Suffer.
Yeah. And I remember there was a moment we both woke up at like 2 a.m. and we just looked at each other and we go, I think I'm dying. Which was like in the moment did not feel dramatic at all.
No.
Like that felt very spot on as to what was happening.
That was real.
But now looking back, it was like you had a little stomach
It
bug.
was fine. It was fine.
Yeah. So I mean, that's not to say that you can't load creatine.
Yeah, no, I mean that's
I wouldn't
freak
do it
accident.
again.
Personally, I think okay. So it takes a while, and I'll get into how long it takes to like go back to like your I'm going to say like quote standard levels,
Sure,
like your non-supplemented levels a little bit later in the podcast. But if let's say I did get back to my non-supplemented levels, and I wanted to get back, I don't know, I think I would probably just do like 10 grams a day for like 10 to 14 days.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go 20 grams a day.
That's a lot.
Yeah, because it's just, I don't know. It's like driving way too fast. It's like you are increasing your odds of a crash.
Yeah. And also, I think we're truly a little scarred. Yeah. So stay on top of your hydration.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So the next section that we're going to talk about is it safe? And we are using a lot of the ISSN's position stand. ISSN stands for International Society of Sports Nutrition. And this is open access. So if anybody here wants to read it, as long as I remember, it will be in the show notes. So there'll be a link to it. But yeah, it's open access. So if you just type in ISSN creatine, you'll get it right away. And if you are a parent whose child is curious about it and you're just kind of unsure, first off, great parenting, for having an open mind rather than just being like, I don't know anything about it, you're not taking it. Then I think this next section will be really important. And if you do want more information, go check out the ISSN position stand. Anyway, since creatine monohydrate became a popular dietary supplement in the 1990s, over 1,000 studies, I repeat, over 1,000 studies have been conducted and billions of servings of creatine have been ingested. Creatine is the number one most studied supplement on planet Earth, and it isn't close. The ISSN has a very positive position stand on creatine. Now, position stands are not just like one study.
Right.
They're the real deal. They take months, if not years, to create. They have a dedicated task force, a lengthy review process. It's like if they put out a position stand, you better pay attention. That is the thing that you want to be checking out. In this position stand, they have 269 studies referenced. Very powerful stuff. Let's get into it. So I'm going to go ahead and read, excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and get into their summary, their bullet points. And so I'm just going to start reading this off. If you don't want to listen to this part, which I actually would recommend you do, but if you don't, skip ahead like 45 to 75 seconds. Okay. 1. Creatine monohydrate is the most effective ergogenic nutritional supplement currently available to athletes with the intent of increasing high-intensity exercise capacity and lean body mass during training. I mean, that's a slam dunk right there. The most effective ergogenic nutritional supplement for people looking to increase lean body mass. Amazing. I would say creatine and caffeine are like the two supplements those are like the gold standard supplements in terms of like increasing your performance or lean body mass. 2, supplementation is not only safe, but has been reported to have a number of therapeutic benefits in healthy and diseased populations ranging from infants to elderly. That's right. They have studied this on infants. And you'd have to read this. It's not like they're just giving it to babies. I mean, that's not like, that is what's going on, but they were disease. They were babies with, I think they had some kind of disease where either they weren't producing their own creatine. I forgot what the acronym for it was, but anyway, there was a medical need for it. It wasn't just like, I want my baby to be jacked, so I'm giving it creatine, which is appealing.
You would sign up for that so fast.
Continuing that one, there is no compelling scientific evidence that the short or long-term use of creatine monohydrate up to 30 grams per day for 5 years has any detrimental effect on otherwise healthy individuals or among clinical populations who may benefit from creatine supplementation. So very safe. 3, if proper precautions and supervision are provided, creatine monohydrate supplementation in children and adolescent athletes is acceptable and may provide a nutritional alternative with a favorable safety profile to potentially dangerous anabolic androgenic drugs. However, we recommend that creatine supplementation only be considered for use by younger athletes who A, are involved in serious/competitive supervised training, B, are consuming a well-balanced and performance-enhancing diet, C, are knowledgeable about appropriate use of creatine, and D, do not exceed recommended dosages. So I think they're just doing their due diligence here. I would say that the A portion of this, involved in serious/competitive supervised training, I don't think it needs to be like anything super, super serious.
Right. We're probably not talking like future Olympian. Yeah.
No. I mean, this is anybody. If your child is lifting weights, I think, I will always say before you introduce any supplement, always talk to a doctor. I'm not your doctor. So don't come asking me in the DMs, would you give creatine to my child? I'll tell you what I'll be doing with our children. Maddie and I have talked about this quite a bit, and we will be giving them creatine starting at a pretty young age.
Yeah.
Not 5.
Yeah, I was going to say that we're not talking like 12 months old.
Maybe 10, 11, or 12 years old. Once they get involved in sport that is a little bit more structured rather than just like kind of like social hour, and like learning about teamwork and stuff like that. Or if they start lifting weights with me, and again, not just like doing some bicep curls in the corner and hanging out with dad kind of thing, but like once they actually start, getting a little bit intense about it. Yeah, that's so definitely by the age of 13. They will almost certainly, I will be encouraging them to take creatine, and I'll be teaching them about it. I'm really excited to, I know that's years away to teach our kids about lifting and nutrition and stuff like that, but I'm just really excited to have this baseline. Don't get me emotional. I'm tearing up a little, but I am really excited to have this base of knowledge because I didn't have this, as a kid. Tearing up a little. Anyway, B, are consuming a well-balanced and performance-enhancing diet. So really all we're looking for here is, they're getting their fruits, they're getting their veggies, they're getting enough protein, and they're getting enough carbohydrates to fuel their exercise. C, are knowledgeable about appropriate use of creatine. Again, this is just, don't be a dummy.
Right. I don't think they have to listen to this podcast before taking it.
No. But maybe their parents should subscribe, and rate 5 stars on this podcast.
We would love that.
And then do not exceed recommended dosages. That's pretty straightforward. 4, label advisories on creatine products that caution against usage by those under 18 years old, while perhaps intended to insulate their manufacturers from legal liability, are likely unnecessary given the science supporting creatine safety, including in children and adolescents. So I think that is very important. You're going to grab creatine and it'll say not recommended for those under 18. That is, as it says, intended to insulate their manufacturers from legal liability. Yeah. I personally do not even, if somebody says I was doing those one-on-one calls and some people under 18, even if people come on one of my creatine posts and say, I'm 16 years old, can I take creatine? I don't touch that.
Yeah. There's
no way that I give advice to those under 18 because it's just the legal liability of telling a child what to do. Not my thing. 5, at present, creatine monohydrate is the most extensively studied and clinically effective form of creatine for use in nutritional supplements in terms of muscle uptake and ability to increase high-intensity exercise capacity. Pretty straightforward, nothing to add there. 6, the addition of carbohydrate or carbohydrate and protein to a creatine supplement appears to increase muscular uptake of creatine, although the effect on performance measures may not be greater than using creatine monohydrate alone. So this is an important one. I don't think this is a need. I don't think this is an absolute must. You need to be taking creatine along with some kind of carbohydrate or carbohydrate and protein. But if you're, if it's something that's easy to do, maybe it's marginally beneficial. Maybe. So for example, let's say post-workout, you have a sandwich and a protein shake or something like that. If you can take your creatine at that time, great. If it is easier for you to take your creatine in the morning by throwing it in your coffee, that's fine too. If you want to throw it in a bowl of cereal, just mix it in with the milk, that's great too. And if it's in just the middle of the day and you haven't had anything in a while and you're just throwing it in some water and throwing it back, that is 100% fine too. Taking it with carbohydrates or carbohydrate and protein might be marginally more beneficial, but this isn't a make or break kind of thing. It's not something you absolutely need to do. Whereas a fat soluble vitamin, you need to have some fats.
Yeah, that's actually kind of what I do is because I take vitamins that frequently need to be taken with a meal, I'll take my creatine at the same time.
Yeah. And there is a section on pregnancy in the ISSN.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were going to touch on that.
No, go for it.
Yeah, so I personally am taking creatine while pregnant. I am not a doctor. I'm not telling you that as a pregnant woman you should also be taking creatine.
She is just giving her personal.
But yeah, I have, from everything I've read and seen,
we did our due diligence.
There's no reason that I would feel nervous or scared. It's been deemed very safe.
And inside the ISSN position, they have a section on pregnancy, and it covers a lot of the potential benefits and the added degree of safety for birth.
Yeah. There's potential benefits for fetal development as well. Yeah. So I personally feel very comfortable taking it, but totally as a pregnant woman, you get to make that choice yourself.
Yeah, and there aren't a whole lot of studies on pregnant women.
No, because it's very ethically challenging.
You can't do studies on pregnant women. The only way that you can kind of get around those kinds of ethical ramifications of doing studies like that is you ask people who are not going to change their behaviors regardless. Yeah. So you find women who are pregnant, who are taking creatine, and you say, are you going to, maybe we advise against it, or we can't, you can't advise for them to do it, but they just ask, are you going to change your behaviors? And if no, great, can we study you?
Yeah. Which, as a pregnant person, I totally get it. I totally get why they can't do studies. I wouldn't be signing up for a study as a pregnant
Right,
woman.
yeah.
But also, it is so
Do you want to take this
frustrating.
white powder? It could be a placebo, or it, you know.
It is so frustrating
Yes.
when you're like, oh, I have a headache. What can I take? And they're like, nothing.
Yeah, right.
Suffer.
Yeah. Yeah, it is frustrating. All right, 7. There are 9 total, by the way. 7. The quickest method of increasing muscle creatine stores may be to consume about 0.3 grams per kilogram per day of creatine monohydrate for 5 to 7 days, followed by 3 to 5 grams per day thereafter to maintain elevated stores. Initially, ingesting smaller amounts of creatine monohydrate, 3 to 5 grams per day, will increase muscle creatine stores over a 3 to 4 week period. However, the initial performance effects of this method of supplementation are less supported. So this is just loading versus maintenance. You know, if you are concerned about GI distress, don't load. And maybe you don't have to go like this 20 gram per day for 3 to 7 or 5 to 7 days.
Right.
Do 10 grams if you want. If you want to go the loading route, by the way, I mean, that's totally your prerogative. Like, you could do whatever you want. It's just, I don't think the potential for GI stress is worth getting to that saturated point a little bit faster. I personally don't think it's worth that. But, you know, some people who, I don't know, maybe they want to just try it out. 8. Clinical populations have been supplemented with high levels of creatine monohydrate, 0.3 to 0.8 grams per kilogram per day. And that is equivalent to 21 to 56 grams per day for a 70 kilogram individual, which 70 kilograms would be about 154 pounds for years, with no clinically significant or serious adverse effects. So, yeah, they have been taking this a lot in very high doses in many studies, and there are no side effects, no negative side effects. So all good there. And then 9, it just says further research is warranted to yada, yada, yada for potential medical benefits. So yeah. The ISSN also mentions the importance of for athletes in contact sports who could be at risk of head injury. And I thought we had a section on that. Yes, we do. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit further down. Now, one big thing to say is there's often this both high protein diets and kidney. You shouldn't do a high protein diet because it, can damage your kidneys, which is a myth. I want to get that squared away really quick. That's a myth. And same with creatine. This will not damage your kidneys. It is totally fine. So as long as you don't have kidney issues, you're all good. I'm sure a lot of people here are familiar, or maybe not familiar, but maybe they have a friend or a friend of a friend or a family member or something like that who said, oh, I had to stop taking creatine because my creatinine levels were high. Creatine and creatinine, unfortunately, are spelled very similar.
Yeah, I mean, they sound pretty spot on.
My brother had mentioned that my creatine levels were too high, and I said, your creatinine levels were too high. And he said, I don't know. And I told him that's what it was.
I can hear that exact conversation happening.
Yeah.
That's verbatim what happened. I guarantee it.
Yeah. So creatinine is a waste product formed from the natural breakdown of creatine in the muscle. Creatine and phosphocreatine are degraded and transported to the blood, and then they are excreted through urine. Now, healthy kidneys filter creatinine. So if there's an increase in creatinine in the blood, that could mean there could be an issue with your kidneys. And that logic is pretty sound. If you see something, if you see that elevated thing, and then your kidneys are supposed to be doing their job, maybe they're not doing their job. So what's going on? So here's the thing. The amount of creatinine in the blood is relative to the amount of muscle mass. Men, on average, especially those with more muscle mass, have higher levels of creatinine due to the more muscle mass. And if you're somebody who lifts a lot and or supplements with creatine, you should expect higher creatinine levels. So, I've had my blood work done, and my doctor has said your creatinine levels are way out of range. They are very, very high. I told her that I'm taking creatine, and she was like, oh, okay, no problem. And so that is the conversation that most of you should be having with your doctors. And don't expect your doctor to just 100% know this, because creatine didn't start becoming popular. I mean, at the absolute earliest, the mid to late 90s. a lot of doctors are older than that.
Right.
And then, and to have them have the knowledge of this one specific supplement, it's borderline unlikely. So, when they get their reference ranges, so if the reference range is like way out of whack, that might be some cause for a little bit of alarm from that doctor. It's like, wait, this person's kidneys okay? So if your doctor is concerned with your elevated creatinine levels, assure them that 1, you take a creatine supplement, and 2, you lift weights, both of which will contribute to higher creatinine levels. This is a-okay. It is not an issue. It's not like higher creatinine levels will cause an issue. It's flip that around. It's higher creatinine levels. Like, let's say I didn't take creatine. Let's say I didn't lift weights or anything like that. I didn't have a whole lot of muscle mass. And maybe I get my blood work, let's say annually or something like that. And my creatinine levels are normal. All of a sudden, huge spike, or like gradually increasing, but I'm not gaining more muscle necessarily, and I'm not taking creatine. That could be cause for concern, because it may mean that my kidneys are not filtering it. Well, it does mean that my kidneys are not filtering it out of the blood correctly. However, creatinine in the blood is not an issue in and of itself. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, you are taking creatine. Creatinine is a byproduct of creatine, so therefore creatinine is higher. That is a-okay. If you or your doctor are still concerned about your kidneys, they can just order other tests. It's not like creatinine in the blood is the one thing you can do to make sure that you have healthy kidneys. That is not it. So just let your doctor know, and just kind of make it, hopefully you don't have like a weird doctor who's like, are you trying to outsmart me or anything like that? I don't know. I don't know if that many doctors exist like that, but
I don't know.
I don't know either. Okay, let's talk about some of the benefits outside of muscle and strength, because I'm sure all of you have been sold at this point, like, okay, we get it. Creatine, it's good for building muscle and strength. But what else is it good for? So this is going to be a little bit more rapid fire than the rest of the...
Yeah. I also, just to jump in, I also feel that some of these, well, obviously strength and muscle growth is very important.
Yep.
I feel like some of this is really the selling point of like, okay, for me, for instance, like, I don't work out super often. I'm not trying to get super jacked,
super
like
optimal or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. So like, is creatine still right for me? Like, do I still need to be concerned with taking it? And this right here is
the selling
just as impactful, if not more so important to me.
Yeah.
And the muscle growth is like a bonus.
These parts are why our kids will definitely be taking it.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's get into it. So benefits outside of muscle and strength: enhanced recovery. And this is likely due to increased carbohydrate / glycogen. When carbohydrates are stored, it's glycogen. So the enhanced recovery, I should say muscle recovery, is likely due to increased glycogen storage in the muscle. Reduced likelihood of injury. This one's pretty cool. There was a 3-year study of D1 college football players, and this was published in 2003 by Greenwood and colleagues. Creatine users experienced less incidence of cramping, heat illness / dehydration, muscle tightness, muscle strain / pulls, non-contact injuries, and total injuries and missed practices than those not taking creatine. So this is kind of an observational thing, but like this was a 3-year study.
Yeah.
With a lot of football players at a very high level.
Right. And even going back, not at a high level, but think back to your high school sport days and think about like how prevalent all of that was.
Yes. And so if there's something that is a low cost supplement, and creatine is by all means a very low cost supplement, I think it'd be worth it. Improved heat tolerance. And this is basically all because of the increased intracellular water. So creatine will pull water into the muscle, and so it's kind of seen as like a strategy to like hyperhydrate athletes who are, especially football players who, they just got a lot of weight on them. They got the pads on them. They're exercising on fields, especially turf fields, which have like the black rubber pellets. Which, have you ever been on a field that has those black rubber pellets in the sun? It'll melt your cleats. It's happened to me. It is so hot with those rubber pellets on there. It's insane. Those fields can get 100, 120 degrees easy. I've exercised on them. I've done soccer practice on them, and they're absolutely brutal. So yeah, improved heat tolerance. That one's huge. And that kind of goes along with like the increased intracellular water. I would assume that's a large part of why, the reduced incidence of cramping.
Mhm.
I mean, heat illness or dehydration, muscle tightness, if muscle is better hydrated,
Right.
it's probably not going to have as many of those injuries. So those kind of go hand in hand. Improved injury recovery. And this is like, let's say you tear your ACL or break an arm or anything like that. Your muscle, you're going to be in a splint. You're going to be in a cast. You're going to be, something like that. And your muscle is going to atrophy, or your muscle is going to shrink. And so muscle shrinking is atrophy and muscle growth is hypertrophy. And so your muscle is going to atrophy. And so creatine will help your injury recovery due to improving your strength rate during the rehab process. So that could be pretty good. I also kind of just like want to quickly mention, because I realize I don't talk about it a whole lot, but the cross education effect. This has nothing to do with creatine.
Okay.
The cross education effect is a very interesting phenomenon where, let's say somebody breaks their left arm and, their bicep and tricep and, maybe pec and whatever else is atrophying.
Mhm.
If they still do weights on their right side, the body will maintain or potentially even grow muscle. I can't say guaranteed maintain. It'll at least slow down the atrophy of, maintain, or potentially even grow muscle on the non-functional arm or non-functional limb. And I think that is the craziest phenomenon. So a lot of people will get injuries. Like I had a client who recently injured his elbow. I don't do one-on-one clients anymore. Sorry. But there's like one guy I still just kind of like help out, sort of, not paid. But yeah, he injured his elbow. And so he's like, I don't know what to do because I can't go work out. I was like, well, first off, you got 2 legs. I mean, the guy doesn't love doing leg day. I don't blame him. But I told him, like, dude, you could still do everything that you want to do with your left arm.
Mhm.
So you could go do a machine press and just do one arm at a time. You could still do a cable row and do one arm at a time. You could do a bicep curl, tricep extension, all those things, one arm at a time. And worst case, you grow muscle on the left side. But best case, you delay atrophy of and potentially even grow muscle on the side that's injured. Like that is just such a cool thing. So I want to bring that up because we're talking about injury recovery. All right, back to it. So next, improved protection and rehab from traumatic brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, and concussions. So if your child is playing a contact sport, this is a good idea. Creatine is a very, very good idea. Researchers have concluded creatine is a neuroprotective agent against both acute and chronic neurodegenerative processes. The protection appears to be related to creatine-induced maintenance of neuronal mitochondrial bioenergetics. Basically, you just have like more energy in your brain or something to that effect.
Yeah.
I think this is a hunch that there's a lot of potential for other neurodegenerative diseases, Alzheimer's, dementia. I just think there could be something there, but I think those studies are still yet to be done.
Mm-hmm.
A number of studies have investigated the short and long-term therapeutic benefit of creatine supplementation in children and adults with various neuromuscular diseases like muscular dystrophies, Huntington's disease, Parkinson's disease, mitochondria-related diseases, and Lou Gehrig's disease. A lot of positive results, some neutral, but at the very least, these studies show that creatine supplementation has been used to treat children and adults with neurodegenerative conditions and is apparently safe and well tolerated, again, when taken up to 30 grams per day for 5 years in these populations. So it just feels like, why not? It feels like you might as well. Like if it's safe and at worst case, it's neutral and best case, there's a positive effect, I'd be throwing everything at the wall, like it's so cheap. It's not like we're talking like you have to spend $100 per month. You buy a $30 bag and you have that thing for like multiple months.
Yeah. I mean, we
bought
a 2-pound bag.
No, I bought.
Oh yeah.
I think I bought 10 kilos.
Yeah.
Well, it was on a sale.
Yeah. It was on a sale.
10 kilos is 22 pounds of creatine. Yeah. And I ended up giving a kilo to Nate.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I can't.
He could have taken a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were like checking the expiration date on creatine. Like, are we going to get through all
I know.
this?
We will. Yeah. A number of studies have shown that creatine supplementation can increase brain creatine content generally by 5 to 15%. Moreover, creatine supplementation can reduce mental fatigue and or improve cognitive function. So there's kind of more of like the brain power stuff. I know personally that my chess game has never been better. I'm kidding. I don't have like a before and after. I mean, it has. Just a flex.
Yeah,
like,
but you don't have like a
but I don't have a
pre-creatine.
pre-creatine, and like the study
Chess comparison.
of just me doing it would not be fair at all, because like over time you just kind of get better at things. But yeah, I will not stop taking creatine because my chess game needs to continue improving. My goal is 1,000 rating by end of year. I started this year at 400 in January, and I'm currently like high fives, like 590. So
yeah, you're getting there.
it was a quick ascent, you know. Actually, it wasn't. 400 to 500 was a slog. 500 to 600 has been moving a little bit quicker. We'll see where the next plateau is, though. But I think there will be diminishing returns in terms of my improvement in chess. Anyway, I'm sorry, not to get like too off topic. We'll get back to the creatine stuff. Creatine supplementation has been reported to help lower cholesterol and triglyceride levels, reduce fat accumulation in the liver, reduce homocysteine levels, serve as an antioxidant, enhance glycemic control, slow tumor growth in some types of cancers, and increase strength and or muscle mass, obviously, minimize bone loss, improve functional capacity in patients with knee osteoarthritis and fibromyalgia, positively influence cognitive function, and in some instances serve as an antidepressant. And I think there are more and more studies coming out about the antidepressant effects.
Yeah.
And anti-anxiety as well, potentially.
Yeah, I don't have one specific to point to, but I feel like we've read a little bit about that. Yeah.
I've read a lot about it.
Yeah. And I mean, anecdotal, but I feel like I definitely noticed when I first started taking it, you know, I'm used to it now, but I feel like I definitely noticed that improvement to mood overall.
You know, that's actually an interesting thing, that our next section is questions to answer. And these are kind of like really rapid fire. But before we get into that, so another thing for my brother. So he's somebody who's taken steroids, but isn't as in the weeds on like did I say steroids?
Yeah.
Okay, before I slander my brother, he has never taken steroids.
I'm sorry. Did you see the look on my face?
Yes, I did. And that's why I was like, wait, did I say that? I was reading this next section. One of the questions for the next section. My brother has never taken steroids, to the best of my knowledge. He definitely does not. No offense, Jordan. He doesn't look like he's taken steroids. Sorry about that, dude. If he's listening, he does listen to our podcast.
That's so funny.
Good guy.
I was like, wow, way to put that out there.
No.
I was like, that's a family secret I didn't even know.
No. Okay. So he has taken creatine, and he mentioned to me, like, he didn't really notice that much of a difference from it. And this is something that, like, I don't think you are going to take creatine. First off, your storages aren't like here and then there. Like, they're not like, it's not an overnight kind of thing where all of a sudden you're going to be like, whoa. You're not going to wake up and just feel like, oh, now I'm creatined. I get it. I get it. That's not how it is. First, it's very subtle. I don't think you'll ever notice that it's working. If your storages are supplemented, and like, you know, let's say the ATP system works for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds, something like that. Let's just say 8 to 10 is like a very general range. If you are supplemented with creatine, maybe that system lasts for 10 to 12 seconds. And so effectively, this means that you can get like a few more reps on a set. Quick post-edit note. So a lot of people believe that this is the way that creatine helps increase lean mass, is because it allows you to get a few more reps because it increases your ATP supply. However, I was listening to a podcast, Stronger by Science podcast with Greg and Lindsay Knuckles, and Greg mentioned something that I honestly have never learned before, and that is that creatine works potentially with some different pathways. And the reasoning here is that there are other supplements that allow you to get a few more reps, like beta-alanine or caffeine, for example, but they don't increase lean mass to the same degree that creatine does. And so two things that he threw out were myogenic regulatory factors. I am sorry that I cannot explain that to you because I simply don't understand it, but it's something that I'm going to be trying to teach myself over the next few weeks, as well as a potential downregulation in myostatin production. And if you've seen the Belgian blue cows, if you haven't, please do Google those because they are absolutely hilarious. They're just
cows that are jacked out of their mind. They look like they're made by AI, but they actually are real. They have very little or potentially even no myostatin production. Myostatin inhibits muscle growth. So, yeah, those are some. There was one more way that I don't remember at the time, but I just want to be clear that creatine helps increase lean mass by more pathways than just increasing the capability of reps that you do. So, if maybe you get like 10 reps, maybe you can get like 11 or 12 once you're, but like in the time that it takes you to saturate your storages, you might have just gotten that strong anyways. And I'm not saying like, so it's not worth taking. That's not it at all.
Right.
All I'm saying is like, it's going to be very hard for you to tell if it's working or not, when it's working. It's just not one of those things. That doesn't mean you should not take it.
Right.
I cannot emphasize that enough. I'm trying to think of an analogy of like, I don't know. I don't see all of the work that people who run the infrastructure of our city do, but it doesn't mean that I want them to stop. Like
Yeah.
Maybe there's some kind of analogy there. That's not the best one, but yeah, it's not something where you're just going to notice it. So, that was kind of a note on like, you did notice maybe less anxiety or depression. I don't think that's going to be the case where all of a sudden somebody's like, I'm way happier now that I'm taking creatine.
Right. These are pretty small.
Yeah.
Small things.
All right, let's get into the questions. So, very rapid fire here. Which kind should you buy? Creatine monohydrate is the most studied and cheapest. Other forms like HCl and ethyl ester have not been shown to be more effective and are more expensive. So don't waste your time. Just get creatine monohydrate. Any brand really works. As long as it is third-party tested, that's kind of a good caveat, is make sure the supplements that you're getting are third-party tested, or else they actually can have some. There was a pretty big study on this that maybe we'll cover sometime on like a supplements episode or something like that. There are a lot of tainted supplements out there. Way, 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 way more than you think. And I wish I had the numbers in front of me right now, but I think we'll cover that in a supplement episode, the importance of third-party testing. So one website that I like is labdoor.com. Honestly, I'm sorry, I don't know how often it's updated, but I liked it back in the day. And I wouldn't say I go to it all the time, because now I have a few brands that I just kind of get.
Right.
My Protein is one that we get from pretty often. I'm sponsored by them. So another way to monetarily support me and Maddie is going to my website, going to products I love, and then using that link for My Protein. And there's a code there too, and it's AlexTMyP. You could do that. You get 40% off, sometimes more, usually 40% though. And so that brings the prices down a lot on both protein and clothing and creatine. And I would say don't buy it on My Protein unless you have that like 40% off code, or if they have another deal. Don't feel like you have to use that code. I'm sorry I'm doing this, but like I just feel the need. If there's like a 50% off sale, use the 50% off code, because I don't get money from you using the code. I get money from you using that tracked link. So it's why I don't promote it very much, because it's just like a hassle. I make like, on a great month, I'll make $20, if I'm like really promoting it. So not that big of a deal. But My Protein, is one brand that I do, and they are third-party tested. And then bulk supplements. And I have to say I'm basically 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure, but bulk supplements is a very reputable company. And we got our last, the 10 kilograms or whatever it was, 5 or 10 kilograms from bulk supplements. I get a lot of supplements from them.
Yeah.
A code for them is actually, I don't have one, but SBS Pod, which is the Stronger by Science podcast. You get 5% off. I might as well.
Yeah,
why not? 5% off for the audience, and it helps out Greg and Lindsay, so might as well. All right, next. Will you gain weight? How much? Yeah, probably. 1 to 2 pounds, maybe up to 4 pounds, but this is water weight, and it's specifically water that is going into the muscle. So if anything, if you're like, no, I can't gain weight, stop. You're being ridiculous. You're being silly right now. It is water that is held in the muscle. So if anything, it's going to help make you look more stronger, leaner. I don't love using the word toned, but I will use it here. It'll help you look more toned, because your muscle will look a little bit fuller. So you shouldn't worry about this. And if you are very concerned about your scale weight to the degree that you won't take creatine, and that's the reason you won't take creatine, you got to wake up. You need a reality check.
The scale weight does not determine your body composition. Do I really need it if my goal is fat loss? Yeah. You don't need it, but
Sure, you don't need it.
you don't need it, but because it won't help you lose body fat necessarily faster. A calorie deficit will do that. But if it increases your rate of muscle growth and strength gain, I should highlight muscle growth here, then it is improving your rate of body composition. If you are growing muscle, let's say you are losing weight at 1 pound per week, but you are gaining muscle either slower or faster. Let's say somebody is gaining muscle at, I don't want to give rates of muscle growth because it's just like, it's way too varied based on like genetics and training program and all that, sleep and stress and protein intake. But let's say somebody is gaining muscle faster or slower, their body composition will be drastically different. So creatine will help you improve your body composition. So if your goal is fat loss, muscle gain, or somewhere in between, yes, you should be taking creatine. Is it a steroid? Where did this myth come from? It is not a steroid. And I think this myth came from I actually couldn't find like pinpoint, but I have to assume that it was the 1990s because those Olympians were using creatine and like, and they were using steroids,
Yeah.
And it was kind of like maybe some sensationalist headlines. Again, I couldn't find anything that was like really pinpoint, but I have to assume it was around that time.
And I feel like, especially for people who are not in the know or really into health and fitness, if you just hear someone say like, oh, I'm taking this in order to improve my strength and muscle growth, like that sounds
the 90s.
Yeah, especially because it's also not super well known or not like a commonly known thing that we make creatine in our body. That
is not well known at all. Yeah. Do I need to take it on vacation? No, you can, but after elevating your storages or like saturating them, it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to go back to baseline. So don't feel like you have to if you're on vacation for 1 week. Now, if you're like what do they call them? Is it snowbird? Yeah. Snowbird is like a term for somebody who lives in the north and then travels south for the winter.
Yeah. I don't know if that's super specific to Michigan.
I don't know. Yeah.
A lot of people in Michigan vacation in Florida.
Yeah. Or like
older,
have like
retired
there. Yeah. And so like there are a lot of people that go there for like 3 or even 6 months. And in that case, then I probably would just bring creatine, in a bag. But I think a lot of people, to the frustration of the TSA, bring inconspicuous white powders in their bag, which is just creatine. But
I was going to say, I'm not going to be the person caught through security with a little baggie of white powder.
No. If you need to do a water cut for a sport like wrestling or MMA, I personally... Now, maybe weight cutting experts would like water weight cutting experts would disagree with me here, but I personally don't think I'd recommend cutting creatine, as creatine will benefit your performance. So, man, maybe I just don't think that it's worth it to cut this, but it depends on like how close your margins are. If you're like I'm not a bodybuilding pro yet. I'm kidding. I don't have any current interest in that. But Maddie and I were joking about that like maybe I'll just be a bodybuilding pro.
And this isn't just a one-off thing. Alex, every couple of months, will just randomly say, like,
I could probably do it.
Maybe I should just start a cut, get really lean.
Go on some stage.
Yeah. Enter some bodybuilding competitions.
Yeah, and see if I can win my pro card. Because, I don't know. There is a bodybuilding pro that I'm, like, kind of buddies with. And, like, he won his pro card. And he said that I would do very well. And there was another pro that I'm not so close with. I mean, I'm not enemies with him. I'm just not as like friends with him. And he said that like I could just get my pro card. I mean, not like any given Sunday,
funsies.
But like as lean as I was. That one time, what was it? September of 2021 or 2? Must have been 2. It was 2. It was 22. Because 2023 was like a few months ago.
Yeah.
September 2022. Yeah, I was very, very shredded. But yeah, is there ever a reason to stop taking it? No. You don't. No, there's no reason. Capsules versus powder, doesn't matter. Do what you...
I will say, though, on capsules versus powder, if you do take in capsules, check your serving size. It might be like 4 to 6 capsules a day.
Actually, my client in Canada, Nicole, she had one. It was 7 capsules.
Yeah. So
that's too much.
I mean, not that it matters.
Powder for me, you just throw a teaspoon. Yeah, and then just shake it up. Boom, down the hatch. Easy peasy.
So it doesn't matter.
7
but
capsules would be really frustrating.
Just watch that serving size, because I would not assume that it was more than 1 or 2.
Right. Can it cause hair loss? No, this is a common myth. And this rumor or myth came from a single study from 2009 on 20 rugby players either taking creatine or a placebo. DHT, which stands for dihydrogen testosterone, increased in the people taking creatine. DHT is linked to androgenic alopecia, which used to be called male pattern baldness or female pattern baldness. But they found like the same things were going on, whether it was men or women. So calling it male pattern baldness wasn't really fair. So they called it androgenic alopecia now. Anyway, but there are so many factors at play here. This study wasn't looking at male pattern baldness or androgenic alopecia or hair loss. It had limited participants in a very specific sample group, which was college-aged rugby players. It was only 3 weeks long, and that's really important. And we would see hair thinning or male pattern baldness, androgenic alopecia, on a much higher rate if this were the case. So many people are taking creatine now. We would have a very bald lifting population, like way more than it is. There are plenty. You go to any gym, there's not a ton of bald people. You would see a lot of bald people.
I don't know. I'm starting to just mentally think if maybe there are a lot of...
Well, The Rock is bald.
Feels like everyone in the UFC is bald now.
So there are some more important notes than just like me saying like this is just a small study and very specific group and yada, yada, yada. While there was an increase in DHT levels, they were still within a standard reference range. So they were still within a range that doctors would look at and be like, you're fine. That alone is very important because a lot of people make this link of like, oh, DHT is linked with androgenic alopecia. So therefore, if creatine increases that, I might lose my hair. That is not the case because the rugby players were still within a standard reference range. The most important thing, and I think this is the nail in the coffin here, is they looked at serum DHT levels. DHT levels in the blood mean nothing when it comes to hair loss. I forgot the phrase for it. It's some very sciencey phrase or it's a very sciencey term, but basically there would have to be elevated DHT in the scalp, not the blood, but in the scalp, because DHT is something where, at least in the scalp, it's localized and it only like will go back and forth between the closest like few cells. So all this is to say, this is a myth that should die. That should die like yesterday. It should not be here. Vegetarians/vegans, is there any added benefit? Definitely. Because vegetarians and vegans are not getting any in their diet, it's even more recommended for them to supplement. Now, the body can produce it, so from the amino acids that they'll get from their diet, but it's not enough. So they will notice an even greater impact than an omnivore would. So very, very important there. Good. Okay, that's it. Anything you want to wrap it up with?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Not as far as creatine goes. I think we really covered it.
I think we covered it. Yeah, this has been great. I was really excited for this episode, and I think it was a slam dunk.
Yeah, this was actually, I think, the first podcast episode you said you wanted to make was one on creatine.
Yeah. I mean, it's just it's a common question that I get so often is creatine questions. And so I'm really excited to be able to just like always say like this, you will learn everything you wanted to know about creatine and more, especially including a 30-minute intro on the history of it, which nobody asked for.
But it was fun.
It was fun. It was the fun facts. Okay. Thank you so much for listening. Once again, I'm just going to do the plugs again. If you enjoyed this, please rate this a 5-star, like, subscribe, or, do your thing or whatever platform you're on. If you really enjoyed it, or if you just want to kind of give some feedback, go ahead and screenshot and share on your story, your Instagram story, and tag us at AlexTameyFitness and at Meals with Maddie. If you want to monetarily support us, check out the A-Team or Forward Forever. Again, Forward Forever registration opens up on 2/11 and we begin on 2/19. That happens every 6 weeks. So if you missed this one, we'll see you in the next. And that's it. Anything you want to add there?
I think that covers it.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again for tuning in and take care, guys.